Well, hello, everybody. This is the Next Week's Life podcast. I got to figure out how to say that easier. That's a little tongue twister. But anyway, I'm very, very, very honored to have Doug Albregts here, the President and CEO of Marco Technologies. We all know Marco. We all know Doug. And I'd like to welcome you, Doug, to our show.
Hey, Mike, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic. We're thrilled to have you on again. I think it's been a few months. We have a little bit of we have a little bit of an objective today. You and I have built a nice relationship, through the years. You and Sharp, all the guys have been wonderfully supportive of ECS and everything we've been doing ever since we started. So I'm grateful for the relationship with you, grateful for the relationship with Sharp. And at ECS, of course, you were there again supporting us. And so the mission for today is to kind of talk about, we came into this year at ECS with a lot of thunder and lightning, great expectations and excitement for, since we've been missing that for a while. And I'm wondering, how are you doing, based on your expectations coming into this new year and after we took a pretty good stake in the ground at ECS? And I know you had a big plan, for this year. Mm-hmm. So what could you share with us as far as, your strategic plan and how are you shaping that up? Where are you?
Yeah, no, thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me on too, by the way. And I thought this year's ECS was amazing. And you and I had a conversation in the hallway saying, I think you're outgrowing, the hotel, which was always I think a good positive, but we all love that venue. So hopefully we can figure that out with the extended size. So thanks for that. And I think, ECS I think this year you did a good job of finally we can do some normalization which is where we're at. I think we had some really difficult years with supply chain issues. We had some really difficult years with the pandemic, and then the ultimate kind of free fall of print, and then the ultimate comeback, and then the stabilization of print, which I think by most estimates has stabilized to from pre-COVID levels at about 80% from where it was. And that seems to be the new normal. And I think that's probably got a lot of people excited. It's still a big industry. I think what people lose track of is it's still, almost a $28 billion industry in North America. So there's plenty of business for those that can capitalize on it. But I think what you've done a good job of, and I think what ECS has done a good job of, is then starting to look at all these other areas where, there's where you can get managed recurring revenue, whether it's from, an IT perspective, which, as Marco, we lump that into things like voice, we lump that into managed services, we lump that into cloud services, we lump security kind of all into that bucket. And what we found, and we have a very, very aggressive plan, and we want to grow organically and through acquisition, but organically on the print side, which is really hard to do. And I think a lot of people, if they're being honest, in my role, will tell you that's not an easy thing to do. But I think on the IT side, for the first time in really in our history, I think last year we grew the most we've ever have organically, powered a little bit by print, but mostly powered by IT, which I think was upwards of 13 to 17% last year over the prior year. And this year, we're up even more than that. And print is still up slightly year over year because I think we're gaining some share and we're knocking down some bigger RFPs. But on the IT side, it's really been crazy on the managed services side, the infrastructure side, because I think there's a lot of years there where a lot of SMBs that we focus on, government, healthcare, education, they weren't implementing infrastructure, and so some of that got dated. And so we're seeing a lot of opportunity there, and we're seeing a lot of opportunity within being able to take that IT sell, that infrastructure sell from IT to our print customers, which is what we call One Marco or cross sell. And that plan this year has done exceedingly well, and we're in a really good spot. We're going organically, and we're looking at, now that we've cleaned up a lot of our own infrastructure to start doing a lot of acquiring. And I think you're going to see a lot of that from us this coming year.
So you're still excited about this year and the business, basically, right? You're still fired up. I recall having a conversation. By the way, thank you for the comments about ECS. And we did pick a new location, so you were right to call me out on it. And we're going to do Scottsdale Resort. So bittersweet move, but you're right, it's growing. So I recall, you and I had a number of conversations here and there about the ability to focus Marco on building out your existing client base, and that organic growth, in large part, could come from your existing client base. So how has that been panning out, through 23? Has that strategy been sound, and would you adjust in any way?
Yeah, the strategy's been really sound. I think that the difficulty is how you measure that, right? So if we sell something to an existing customer, like a Microsoft license, for instance, is that good enough to call it a cross sell? Or do we get managed services? When we look at IT, what happens is most of our customers use us as the exclusive sole outsourcing for all their IT needs, or usually we might just be a bolt-on to what they currently have and doing some pieces of it for them. And those are two very different things. But from a cross-sell perspective, or one Marco is what we call it, that's been going exceptionally well because it really started with data and then how to be able to measure that success. We started a robust data analytics group within Marco, and we were able to kind of segment our customers into boxes, if you will. Not that they deserve to be in a box, but from a data standpoint, based on what they're buying and based on the capabilities of what they could buy from us. And one of the things we found, those numbers are going up, by the way, not as fast as we wanted them to, because the contracts are usually on different cycles. Number one is what we find. But the second thing is that in many cases, that conversion internally and putting people in a position to succeed, to know how to sell it, has been another barrier. And then, there's a solutions architect piece to this. It's a completely different, even though they both products touch the network, they're just a completely different sell. So we've struggled a little bit with that, but now we have the data to measure a lot of that. We're seeing some progress in that. And we've gotten more sophisticated as a business on how we deliver that. We've started a portal. We're trying to get every one of our 24,000 customers with a contract with us signed up in the portal. And the reason for that is they can transact in the portal. They can add other components onto their existing contracts within that portal. So these are the things we felt we had to kind of become more efficient, if you will, become a little bit more technologically savvy in what we're doing internally to be able to enable this cross sell. And we're starting to see the fruits of that as we move forward here. So.
It's interesting. How do you, I hear some of the dealers, I'm never going to get in IT services. I'm going to stick with the core, big or small. I mean, it's almost not size related. It's a philosophy. And Marco made I think, a pretty serious, aggressive, bold decision to really expand that IT business. So how do you when you're looking at acquisitions and things like that, how does IT services group or that community factor into your acquisitions? Do you shy away from it? Do you look for it? I mean, how does that play into your thinking?
Yeah, on the IT side, mostly, Mike, what we find is companies that are that will be focused on one particular area within the IT segment, right? So it's very hard to, if that bolt-on, if you will, if that's going to be accretive, then it makes sense for us to look at it. The multiples are much higher in that space. So the question becomes, how do you, is it easier to buy an historical print, primarily print dealer, and then be able to bring over the IT infrastructure and services over to that, and that makes that acquisition more accretive because the print side of it, the multiples are less. The challenge with that is, you don't have the know-how there, you don't have the history, and the ramp time's a little bit longer. So, we haven't gone upstream and we've done very few acquisitions on the managed IT side. because those multiples are higher, and because they're usually very nichey in what they do, in the customers that they serve. So that's been the challenge for us. But I think the bigger challenge for us was just fixing some of our own internal infrastructure, which I think a lot of people lose sight of when they're running these businesses. We got to be a very big organization quickly through acquisition, and we were very inefficient in some ways. We had multiple contracts for some of our customers, and we weren't that easy to do business with. And on the IT side, you have to have people, you have to have engineers that can help spec out infrastructure and what that looks like, and understand what a Cisco enterprise implementation looks like, what a voice a managed voice implementation can look like. And a lot of times, rep can maybe sell that, but then you've got to have a team of solution experts coming in behind that to spec it out, and not over promise and under deliver. So it's pretty delicate, and I think that's why this industry's had a hard time kind of acclimating to it, because everybody says you got to get into IT, you got to diversify, you got to get into IT. And I think you've done a good job at ECS of bringing in some of these key people that can help you do it, like ConnectWise and Microsoft, and bringing in different versions of all of those folks that have started to make a headway in this channel. Kaseya, Perch from a detection standpoint, from a security standpoint. So, and security is just becoming such a physical and cyber has become. So if you're going to be into IT, you got to really think about what kind of security practice you're going to have, because especially if you're a fully outsourced IT, if we're going to be the ones that are going to be the fully outsourced management of the IT infrastructure, then that data of that customer becomes our responsibility. So that's another key area here, and it's not really that hard. I mean, a lot of companies make it easy for us now in that industry. You're bringing a lot of them to ECS, so I give you credit for that. But I think those are some of the challenges, and how we buy and what we look at.
Yeah, well, good. Thank you. We try to focus on some of those things at ECS, and we make some headway. But I thank you for the nice comments. We'll continue to do that. So let's shift gears a little bit. We share the same circles. We were at the Sharp Show, which, by the way, I think was phenomenal. They did a great job, didn't they?
It did, and I'm really. This sounds condescending, like I'm a proud father, but they did a great job, and I think Mike Maruzik's done a great job running that company, and that show was incredible. So I give kudos to them. They've really done a great job through the turmoil in the industry of running that business. So.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Props to Mike. We're watching a butterfly morph. He's really taken it and run with it. So shifting gears a little bit on when you look this year, next year, and beyond, there is all of this speculation always by some people about consolidation and what does it mean, and some dealers are going to the impact on the dealer, the impact on the OEMs, etc. How do you and your investment groups look at that? Is it important to you? Is it part of your strategy to research that? What's your personal input and observation about, does it even matter at the end of the day?
Yeah, I think the news in the last couple of days, you and I talked about this offline, but I think the Konica news was a little, at least again, if you look at the filings in Japan and some of the news there, and then I think Sharp had some interesting news and some losses on the display side of the business, and so for me, I think that's an indication that there has to be some consolidation. That's not me saying that that's going to happen between Konica or Sharp or anyone for that matter, but I think that it's not sustainable to have as many players that we have in this side of the group. So I think, again, it's a real big market. I still think there's legs in it, but I don't think there's enough legs for that many people to be, or that many companies to be involved in it. That's my own personal opinion. I could be wrong, but that's kind of how I'm segmenting that. And look, PE got into this, for a reason, and I think that, and I can only speak for the firm that I work for, which is, I would say this whether they were listening to this or not listening to this, but they're an incredibly reputable they've been an incredible value add partner for us. That's Norwest Equity Partners, and they would tell you this has been one of their best investments that they've made, in quite some time. And our business spins off a lot of cash. One of the things we've done when we've made acquisitions is we fully integrate the acquisitions. It takes us some time to add the IT piece to it, but we add the IT piece to it, and it spins off a lot of cash. So we were able to do a dividend recap at one point in the business, which is public knowledge, and we've been paying off that debt. They've never looked back. They think this has been one of the best investments, and I think I can speak for the others in it that are very satisfied with the investment that they made. None of them are looking in the rearview mirror, and you can't speculate. They're private, number one, and number two, they're incredibly smart people, and they don't get into things not knowing what they're getting into and not having a very good idea of what that return on equity is going to be. And at least from a Marco standpoint, I can assure you that NEP and the Marco employees have all benefited equally significantly. And I can't speak to the others because I'm not in those companies, but I know enough to know that, in the circles of talking to the other private equity folks that own some of these businesses in this industry, they've never looked back either. So I think maybe that's the other side of the story that probably gets missed here is that I'm always a little concerned when somebody's speculating on private equity and why they got in and how well they're doing. They're doing really well in this case, especially in the Marco case.
Well, that's good input. I'm not really big on speculators or rumor mongering, so I think your clarity around that is very important. These are very smart people. I've had my own experience with private equity people, and generally speaking, if they don't bring a value, that shows itself very quickly. Equally, that they're very far and few between. They always are smart people and always bring value. So I'm glad to hear you say that. So when you look at the rest of this fiscal year, what troubles you? What concerns Doug Albregts when you get up in the morning and say, "Oh my God, what's going to happen in whatever, a couple months?"
Yeah, that's good. It's a great question, Mike. I think we're way over prior year right now. I think we're trending north of 20% organic growth over prior year. That's the good news. I think the difficult news is the margin compression is getting a little bit challenging in all sides of the business because it's gotten very competitive. And I think, we've had a lot of our businesses have had a lot of inflationary pressures in wages, inflationary pressures in benefits. And so we're all seeing that, but I think the margin piece is a little bit harder. So I think over the years, there's been model changes. There's been, a ton of models out there right now that are happening congruently with one another in terms of whether it's flat rate on a print, for say, or it's the old CPC model, or, everybody's got a NPS, obviously. And on the IT side, same way. I think there's a trend that's happening where you can get the per user gets all their IT needs from a menu, from a laptop to all the software loaded on the laptop to access to cloud, to you name it, to WebEx, to whatever it may be. And I think we're moving towards a world where, you pay $250 or whatever it is per user, including print, whatever it is per user, $250 to $400 a month per user to get all those things managed and the security piece. I think, there's going to be a model change at some point because on our side of it, we're used to very, attractive gross margins to drive the business because of the heavy service footprint. I think service is another key thing. I think the more advanced we get in service, the more remote we can do service, the more service changes. I think the challenge becomes is how do you keep, the CDWs out of this, and how do you keep some of the players that have some huge strength out of this? And I think what keeps us and anybody listening to you right now, what keeps us into the differentiated column in this mid-market, the small to medium-sized market, is the services we provide to those customers, and that's key. So I think the more we can evolve, and AI I think is going to be a part of that, the more we can own the relationships and drive that service around all the components that touch the office environment. I think I think that's going to be that's what keeps me up is how what is the evolution of that and how do we adapt and how do we keep deriving value from it?
Well, interesting. We could probably we're kind of counting down the clock here, but there is a key component. I agree with you on the AI factor, or even the extended chat, GPT factors on whether it be manufacturing or service desks, and so on. There's a group that I'm not sure if you've heard of them. We could probably take this offline, but there's a group that we're working with right now, and the acronym is SESME, and I can explain that a little bit later. But essentially, they're a government affiliated group that is in the process of actually creating guidelines, regulations, and in some cases even laws around the application of AI and ChatGPT. And we have been working with them for about a year now, since the last ECS, and this is going to be a big focus for us at the upcoming ECS, because what I'm trying to figure out a way, to be perfectly candid with you, to become part of the guideline creation rather than having the guidelines put upon us, and to become part of that group, that team. And they're drilling into vertical market applications, which is where I think we can offer a great deal of help. And that's where I would come back to you and say, hey, you know what, Doug, would Marco be interested in, developing that kind of relationship with some of these folks? So, just kind of keep that one in your head. Anyone could look them up. They're on the internet. You can certainly go look for them yourself. And I don't mind people doing that, because I think it helps them and it helps the industry. But in any case, when you look at chat and artificial intelligence, are you looking at this from a margin improvement, expense reduction? How do you think of AI and ChatGPT going forward?
Yeah, I don't think we know enough yet. I don't think we know enough yet to be dangerous. So I think we're starting in the service space, and how do we use AI and all the data points that go into AI, and how is that going to impact the service piece of it? Because I'm not sure there's a big sales piece to it yet, but I think on the service side, with the volumes of data that we're able to get from machines, and the volume of data we're adding about what's happening in our service organization, we're starting there. But I think you make a good point, Mike, which is, how do we as an industry come together and kind of set in motion what the footprint should be, and how do we come together to set what the model should be? And obviously without any antitrust issues, we don't want to get involved in that. But I think we've got to play a role in that. And I think the other challenge, kind of bridging these two questions, the one you said, what keeps you up and worried, and then I said the whole AI thing. I think a lot of dealers are starting to, for the first time, or especially the big ones, are going to start to overlap a lot. I think it's going to cause problems for the OEMs. It's going to cause problems for the dealer, the integrity of what we used to call the integrity of the dealer channel. And I think that collaboration that was once readily available amongst dealers might be not as readily available as we start to encroach upon one another and get a little bit bigger. I mean, we're doing business in 30 states right now. We don't have locations in 30 states, but we have customers in 30 states, because when we land an RFP or we land a new customer, a lot of times it might be in Minneapolis, but they have offices in Colorado, or they have New Mexico or Texas. And so we end up, having to, in some cases, put feet on the street there or use other partners. And as we get bigger, we'll probably want to manage a lot of that on our own. So I think those are the two things that are interesting. But back to AI, I think where we can get damaged as an industry, I think where we can get dinged up is going to be on the service side, because again, that's the holy grail for all of us. Without the service piece, there's not much of a business left over, if any, because we can't compete with the guys with scales that are moving products and doing it on a value add basis, but don't have the service piece.
Yeah, and that's where all the jitters come from, right? But the reality of it is, I mean, we're a workplace services provider industry. We just
Yeah.
have to start talking calling ourselves that. I mean, the model will be services related, and that includes AI and chat and all those other things. So I appreciate your candor with that. It's part and parcel of just doing business in today's world, right?
Yeah.
So final two questions. One is more on a personal side. So how's the rock band going?
You picked a good day to ask. Yeah, I just released another single off my Dutch Motel album, and it's a great passion to have. It's really helped me at Marco, to be honest, because it's something I like to do on the weekends, and it just keeps me nimble, it keeps me creative, and I actually believe it helps me at work quite a bit. Yeah, but just dropped a new single. It's called Autumn Audio. It's out on every platform you can find digital music, and it's been a lot of fun. It's been cathartic for me in many ways. So thanks for asking about it.
Yeah,
But
no
yeah, Little Falls
problem.
Trophy Music. So people, if you want to follow, if you want to know what the hell we're talking about, littlefallstrophymusic.com or Little Falls Trophy Music on Instagram. So
Awesome. We'll make sure we put that in the blurb. But I know you love music. You're good at it. And for everyone that's listening, you should go listen. It's kind of fun. It's kind of funny to watch and listen to Doug Albregts, the CEO of Marco, whacking away at some of this music. It's awesome. So the last and final question, as we basically run into the second half of the year, what would the best counsel? What's your best advice? For the industry at large. What would you say to them about making sure that they finish up the year in a strong way?
yeah, I think what I feel is I think we're at the tipping point for a lot of players in this industry because we had COVID, everybody's service costs went down, but yet people were still had to pay for devices, so there's some inflation in their EBITDA. Then coming out there were the kind of the supply chain issues, but a lot of people were able to get through that with PPE money, and I mean on and on and on. So there's a lot of, I think, there's a lot of propping up, if you will. And I think there's not going to be as much propping up. And I think there's going to be some consolidation. So, the advice I would have, again, it's one I've always said, which is, you look at retention rates for, most companies will tell you, oh, we retain 99% of our customers. I think some of the smallest dealers might have the ability to do that. But when you get to our size, it's usually between 92 and 94 on the print side. And it's much less on the IT side because there's so much more that can go wrong in IT, and it's just a more competitive sales set in some ways, depending on what it is. But and that usually is in the high 80s for a retention rate. But when we get both of them, if we can get both sides of the house doing business with the customer, that usually has a tendency to bump to 98, 99%. And I think so. I would say for everybody out there, you got a captive customer. The more you can do to get other things in their environment and manage that, and whether it's physical security, I've heard a lot of people into, car charging stations. That we heard that at your, at the conference at ECS, and I think those are all great add-ons. And I think the more diversity you get in your base of what you do, it's just the better, the more sound you're going to be, because who knows what area is going to take off and what's going to go where. We just know one thing: print is slowly declining. It's not going away. We've said this for 12 years or however long,
Yeah.
but it's not the place. It's not really the place to be for a long-term strategy anymore, unless your strategy is I'm going to grab as much share as possible. But when you start seeing OEMs having some of the challenges that they're having, that's the indicator, as you know, because you were in the Minolta piece of it not that long ago, Mike. But so
Yeah.
when that starts happening, there's something to worry about. So I guess that would be my bit of advice.
Well, Doug, we appreciate it. Everyone always learns something from you, and usually it's a lot. It's a great conversation. I appreciate you bringing clarity to, some things people in the industry might be wondering about, worrying about. Certainly, the input around Marco is great. I thank you always for your support of not just ECS, but myself personally, and of veterans. I know you have a lot of heartfelt commitment to the hiring of the veterans and the programs surrounding that. So I'll look forward to hopefully working more closely with you and your group on that. But frankly, I'm bullish, on the industry. I think there's a lot of smart people in this industry like you, and we'll figure it out, whatever kind of model comes our way. So, with that, I know it's Friday. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and
You too, Mike.
hit the guitar. So, so
Well, I'll try,
you
but it is
got it.
lacrosse season, so I got to go to some lacrosse. My son plays college lacrosse, so we're going to do a little NCAA tournament this weekend. That'll be fun.
All right. Well, mix it up, do some jamming, and we'll talk to you soon. Have a great
All right,
weekend,
Mike.
Doug.
Be
Appreciate
well.
it.
Take care, man.
You too.